The neighborhood had always prided itself on order, rules, and appearances. Every lawn was manicured to perfection, every fence painted to HOA regulation standards, and every driveway clear, except tonight, when flashing red and blue lights cut through the quiet evening. An ambulance siren screamed in the distance, rushing down the main road toward the gated community. Inside that ambulance, a paramedic barked orders as they worked on a patient clinging to life. But at the gate stood the one obstacle no one could have predicted. Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the HOA, clipboard in hand, standing defiantly in the middle of the entrance, arms stretched wide like a human barrier. The paramedic leaned out of the passenger side window, shouting over the sirens, "Ma'am, we have a critical emergency. Move your vehicle." But Karen, instead of complying, narrowed her eyes. She gestured toward a small laminated badge clipped to her sweater and declared, "No emergency vehicles are allowed inside without prior approval. That's an HOA rule. We don't need sirens disturbing residents at this hour. You'll have to turn around." The driver slammed on the horn, the deafening blast echoing across the manicured streets, while the patient inside the ambulance gasped desperately for air. Every second mattered, but Karen planted her feet like she was the final gatekeeper of life and death. A neighbor ran from his porch, waving frantically. "Karen, for God's sake, move. That ambulance is here for someone in the neighborhood." But Karen spun on her heel, shouting back, "Rules are rules. If I make an exception, then what's next? Pizza delivery cars? Strangers barging in pretending they're doctors?" The scene escalated quickly. Another car approached from behind the ambulance, this time a sheriff's cruiser, lights flashing. The deputy stepped out, hand resting on his belt. "Ma'am, you need to move right now. This is a life-or-death situation." But Karen only doubled down, her voice trembling with fury and misplaced confidence. "I know my rights. You can't just enter private property without HOA clearance." "I'll call my lawyer," she shrieked, blocking the ambulance even as the deputy warned her she was interfering with emergency services. Inside the ambulance, the patient's condition worsened. The paramedic shouted to the driver, "We're losing him. He needs a hospital in minutes." The driver revved the engine, creeping forward inch by inch as if daring Karen to hold her ground. And unbelievably, she did. She slammed her palm on the hood and screamed, "If you push past me, that's assault." The deputy rushed forward, grabbing her arm, but Karen fought back with shocking chaos, swinging her clipboard at him, screaming for the neighborhood to witness how she was defending the HOA from trespassers. Neighbors poured out of their homes, cell phones in hand, recording the surreal spectacle. Some shouted at Karen to move, others egged the deputy on to arrest her. One elderly resident clutched her chest in horror while a group of teenagers laughed nervously, streaming the entire ordeal live. The perfectly kept street, usually echoing only with sprinklers and birds, had turned into a chaotic stage lit by flashing sirens and flooded with raw human panic. Then came the most chilling twist. As more neighbors gathered, a panicked voice cut through the air. It was Karen's own son, sprinting down the sidewalk, tears streaking his face. "Mom, move. That ambulance, it's for Dad." He collapsed. The crowd fell silent. The deputy froze. Even the paramedics looked up in shock as Karen's son screamed again, "They're here for Dad. He's dying." For the first time, Karen's defiance faltered. Her face drained of color, clipboard clattering to the ground as reality set in. She turned slowly toward the ambulance, realizing the patient inside, fighting for every breath, was the very man she claimed to protect by blocking strangers. But by then, precious minutes had already slipped away. The paramedics threw open the rear doors, revealing the pale, unconscious figure on the gurney, Karen's husband. Neighbors gasped. The deputy shoved Karen aside as paramedics rushed equipment to stabilize him. Karen collapsed to her knees, shrieking, "I didn't know. I didn't know." But her screams didn't erase the damage. The paramedic barked, "Clear," and a defibrillator charged. The neighborhood, once obsessed with silence and order, was now filled with chaos, sirens, shouting, and the raw sound of life slipping away. Karen tried to crawl toward the gurney, but deputies held her back as paramedics worked furiously. She clawed at the pavement, begging them to let her closer, insisting she hadn't meant to delay them. Her voice was raw, torn between hysteria and denial. "Please. That's my husband. Please, save him. I didn't know it was him." The deputy holding her muttered under his breath, "You almost cost him his life," as neighbors shook their heads, whispering in disgust. The minutes dragged like hours. The sharp crackle of the defibrillator echoed through the night, followed by tense silence as everyone held their breath. Karen's sobs pierced the quiet, her once commanding voice now reduced to desperate wails. Finally, a weak pulse returned. The paramedic shouted, "We've got him!" and the gurney was lifted back into the ambulance. Relief rippled through the crowd, but it was bitter, tainted by the knowledge that every second of delay could mean irreversible damage. As the ambulance finally tore through the gates, Karen lunged after it, screaming her husband's name, but deputies restrained her. The sirens faded into the distance, leaving behind a street that would never be the same. Neighbors murmured to one another, some openly condemning her, others just shaking their heads in disbelief. The woman who had once lorded over them with rules and citations had, in one night, shattered her own authority. Videos of the incident spread instantly, dozens of phones uploading the chaotic scene to social media. Within minutes, hashtags trended, hashtag HOA Karen, hashtag ambulance blocker, hashtag rules over lives. The neighborhood that once bowed to her power now despised her. Some neighbors muttered about forcing her off the HOA board, while others swore they'd never forgive her. One elderly man spat on the ground near her, saying, "You care more about rules than people. You nearly killed your own husband." Karen, still trembling on the asphalt, no longer looked like the enforcer she once was. The clipboard, the symbol of her control, lay broken in the gutter, forgotten. Her authority was gone. Her reputation destroyed. And though the ambulance carried her husband toward a chance at survival, the neighborhood knew one thing for certain: the memory of this night, and Karen's infamous stand at the gates, would never be erased.